The wind
I know
howled
you're
like a
scared.
wounded animal as
Are they
Sarah
going to
Mitchell
hurt
pressed her
us?
face
Stay
against
away
the
from
frosted
her.
window of her
I'm not the
mountain
threat.
cabin, watching the blizzard transform the world outside into a white abyss. For 3 years, this isolated sanctuary had been her refuge, a place where she and her 7-year-old daughter Emma could heal from the wounds of abandonment, where they could rebuild their lives one quiet day at a time. But nothing could have prepared her for what was about to unfold on that bitter January night, or how a single act of compassion would change everything she thought she knew about strangers, community, and the extraordinary capacity of the human heart to give when it has every reason to close itself off from the world. The temperature had plummeted to -15 degrees when Sarah first heard the rumble of motorcycle engines cutting through the storm. She squinted into the darkness, her heart racing with a mixture of fear and disbelief. Who would be crazy enough to ride motorcycles through a blizzard in the Colorado Rockies? As the sound grew louder, she could make out headlights piercing through the snow, weaving up the mountain road toward her property. One motorcycle, then 5, then 10. The numbers kept growing until she counted 25 riders, their bikes struggling against the accumulating drifts, their leather jackets providing little protection against nature's fury. Sarah's first instinct was to lock the doors. A single mother alone with her daughter, miles from the nearest town, facing 24 bikers in the middle of a deadly storm, it was the setup for every cautionary tale she'd ever heard. Her hand trembled as she reached for her phone, only to remember that the cell towers had gone down an hour ago. She was completely alone, with no way to call for help and no choice but to trust her instincts. Then she saw one of the riders collapse. The figure crumpled into the snow, and 2 others rushed to help him up. Even from her window, Sarah could see they were in serious trouble. These weren't menacing outlaws looking for trouble, they were human beings caught in a life-threatening situation, and she was their only hope. She thought of her daughter sleeping peacefully in the next room, of the risks and the dangers, of all the reasons to keep that door locked. But she also thought of the man she'd just seen fall, of how he was someone's son, maybe someone's father, and how she would want someone to help Emma if she were ever in such desperate circumstances. Sarah grabbed her coat and flung open the front door. "Get inside," she shouted into the wind, her voice barely carrying over the storm. "All of you, get inside now." The bikers didn't need to be told twice. They helped each other through the snow, carrying the weakest among them, stumbling into the warmth of Sarah's cabin like shipwreck survivors finding shore. Soon her modest living room was filled with 25 shivering, frost-covered strangers, their breath creating clouds of condensation, their faces red and raw from the brutal cold. Sarah immediately sprang into action, pulling every blanket from her closets, starting fires in both fireplaces, and putting every pot she owned on the stove to boil water for coffee and tea. "We're the Mountain Ridge Veterans Riding Club," explained a silver-haired man whose name was Tom, his voice shaking from cold and gratitude. "We were heading back from a charity event in Denver when the storm hit harder than predicted. We thought we could make it through, but..." He trailed off, looking around at his group with concern etched deep into his weathered face. Emma emerged from her bedroom, rubbing her eyes in confusion at the crowd of strangers filling their home. Sarah held her breath, worried her daughter might be frightened, but Emma simply walked up to the nearest biker, a tough-looking woman with tattoos covering her arms, and handed her a stuffed bear. "You look cold," Emma said simply. "Mr. Snuggles always makes me feel better." That simple gesture broke something open in the room. These tough, leather-clad veterans, men and women who had served their country and seen things no one should have to see, found themselves blinking back tears at the pure kindness of a 7-year-old child. Throughout the night, Sarah worked tirelessly to care for her unexpected guests. She made endless batches of soup with whatever she could find in her pantry, distributed warm clothes, and tended to frostbitten fingers and toes. The bikers, in turn, shared their stories, tales of service and sacrifice, of brotherhood and loss, of how they rode together to help fellow veterans struggling with PTSD and homelessness. As dawn broke, the storm finally began to subside. The bikers prepared to leave, thanking Sarah profusely, promising they would never forget her kindness. Tom pressed a business card into her hand, but Sarah waved it away. "Just pass it forward," she said softly. "Help someone else when they need it." The bikes rumbled down the mountain, and Sarah thought that would be the end of it. A strange, beautiful night she would remember forever but never speak of to anyone who wouldn't believe it. She was wrong. The next morning, Sarah woke to a sound that made her heart stop. It was the rumble of motorcycles again, but this time it was different, deeper, louder, like thunder rolling across the mountains. She rushed to the window and gasped. Her cabin was surrounded, not by 25 bikers, but by 200. They filled her driveway, lined the road, parked in every available space on her property. Veterans of all ages, from all over Colorado and beyond, had come. As Sarah stepped onto her porch in stunned silence, Tom approached with tears streaming down his face. "You opened your home to us when you had every reason to be afraid," he said, his voice carrying across the crowd. "You gave everything you had to strangers. So we asked ourselves, what can we give back to the woman who saved our lives?" What happened next was something Sarah would never forget. The bikers had organized a massive fundraiser overnight through their networks and social media. They presented Sarah with an enormous check, enough to pay off her mortgage, cover Emma's education, and secure their future. But that wasn't all. Over the following weeks, the bikers returned again and again. They repaired Sarah's aging roof, fixed her broken-down truck, chopped enough firewood to last 3 winters, and established a college fund for Emma that would grow with contributions from veteran groups across the country. But perhaps the most precious gift was the family Sarah and Emma gained. They were no longer alone in their mountain refuge. The riding club adopted them as honorary members, checking in regularly, inviting them to events, and surrounding them with a protective circle of love and support. Emma found herself with dozens of honorary aunts and uncles who doted on her, while Sarah discovered a community that valued her not for what she could give, but for who she was. The story of the single mom who sheltered 25 freezing bikers spread across the internet, touching hearts around the world. People were hungry for proof that goodness still existed, that kindness could be repaid, that humanity hadn't lost its way. Sarah's act of courage, opening her door when fear told her to keep it locked, became a symbol of what we're capable of when we choose compassion over caution, when we see the humanity in strangers rather than the threat. Years later, Sarah would tell Emma that the night of the blizzard taught her the most important lesson of her life, that we are never truly alone, that the love we give out into the world has a way of coming back to us multiplied beyond measure, and that sometimes the greatest risk we can take is trusting in the fundamental goodness of the human heart. The bikers had given her more than money or repairs, they had given her faith in humanity itself, proof that kindness is never wasted, and that sometimes the family we choose becomes more powerful than the one we were born into.